Hi there, gaming buddies. This is general game master advice about how to use time as a motivator. So there is a time restraint or a deadline of some sort. This could be either as the main driving force of the plot or just a part of the adventure. The good thing about using this sort of motivator is that it gets the group thinking and moving, elevating the need for quick and decisive action. Um, it's it's good for especially those kinds of groups where they like the planning stage, where many hours of the gaming session are spent just strategizing. But this can be a nice change of pace when you really shift the gears on them and they don't have time. Now they have to think tactically instead of strategically. And it can even be good for all sorts of other groups, but especially those that are sort of stuck in a rut where they have a certain way of approaching problems where, okay, now let's stop and make a plan. Maybe not. You don't have time now. You have to move. You have to push them a bit. Of course, you can't do this too much. There is something to be said for those times of rest and reflection between game sessions. For example, my game sessions usually end after a fight or when they reach a certain town or what have you, so that when the next session starts, they are not immediately in a hurry. They can look around the town, sell their loot, or if they're in a dungeon, they have refreshed their spells, or in a science fiction game, they have reached the barracks and now they have done their weapon maintenance and what have you. But if there is a constant hurry, that can be a bit, well, there's the good kind and the bad kind of stress, and there's a fine line between the two. But overall, I think it fits most genres and most gaming groups as long as you use it only here and there. Of course, there are examples in fiction, for example, the TV series 24, which is just like one mad rush towards the finish line. And Jack gets there, but it takes 24 episodes. So, uh, but yeah, that kind of plot would be pretty difficult to run for an entire group where there's not just one primary actor, because the more people you have, the more time they need for rest, and they might need different sorts of resources so that they can operate at full or at least standard capacity. Uh, and in order for this to work at all, the player characters need to be aware of it. you know, they have to know what the time limit is. Roughly, they don't have to know to a second, but they need to know, and they also need to know what they will lose if they fail. And a failure must be a significant thing. Otherwise, this again will not work. At least not in the way that you are probably want it to work. Uh, so a crude thing might be that they have some kind of mechanical hindrance if they fail, like, oh, they lose an arm or what have you. But I think something that works better is a story and role-playing based laws. So, for example, they might lose their hometown where all the shops are and their contacts and friends and so on. They might lose a base of operations. Uh, the faction that they are working for loses significant power in the region. All sorts. Um, of course, it can also be just that they lose a bunch of money, but that's that's a surprisingly strong motivator for a bunch of adventurers, whatever genre you might be playing. And also, in order to keep up this motion, this forward motion, you have to be on the lookout on during a game session for those players who are not taking part or might be a bit more quiet. You have to ask them for what they are doing. If they have been quiet for too long, then you need to get them engaged in the process as well, so that it making that quiet guy talk and take part will bring out the need for action in the other players as well. At least that's what I found. And this one good thing about using this plot device in general is that it does certainly make the game world feel more alive, because it is clearly pointing out to the players that just because you are resting and taking a break doesn't mean that the non-player characters are. Uh, those other factions out there, they are working away in doing whatever they mean to do, and just resting on your laurels is not going to solve anything. It's just going to make it easier for the enemy to operate. Of course, a bunch of different ways that I've used this in my games. Uh, very basic ideas here, but I'll expand on each a little. First one was in a fantasy game. This is the ritual, and yeah, a lunatic mage in a nearby forest. They know that if the ritual is completed, a bunch of monsters will come streaming out of the forest into the village, killing many, probably wiping out the place entirely. And they know that the ritual is something that the mage has been preparing for a long time, and his power will reach its apex at the next full moon. So that's probably when the ritual will culminate. So they have a general time limit, but the time when the moon is full can be, it can be many, many hours. And so it's not like counting every second. And if they get there in record time, even a couple of days before the ritual is finished, then yeah, it's a significant victory. In a science fiction game, I had a bomb that had been planted by some terrorists. It was ticking away, and they had to track down these members of the cell and interrogate them, find out where the bomb was, and then find a way to disarm it, because this was in eclipse phase where the level of technology is very high, so it wasn't just a matter of cutting the right wire. There were no wires really. And in a cyberpunk game many, many years ago, this is actually remember this very fondly. It was one of the best adventures I ever wrote, and the guys really got into it, because here they were a bunch of corporate people that belonged to a a rescue team, and they were sent after a VIP that was I think it wasn't the CEO, but it was a guy on the board of directors of their corporation, and he had been kidnapped, and now the guys had to go after the kidnappers, bring the guy back before the rival corporation folks could, uh, through brain dance and drugs, gain certain piece of information out of the guy's head. And it was a very high octane game. They were constantly on the move, and stakes were high because there it was obvious that if they failed, then their stock prices would plummet, meaning that even if they got paid, they would get like a pittance, not much at all, and it would make it much more difficult for them to function in the future because their rival corporation would have more manpower, more resources, and so on, and would probably have some private information on each of them, the player characters, that is. But towards the end of that adventure, they found out that uh, one of the brain dances that they had tried on this board member had resulted in a hemorrhage of some kind. So now the guy was actually dying. They were still trying to get the information out, but now he was dying. And so the deadline became even more serious. And yeah, but it worked great. But this is really something that can spice up any kind of adventure or plot uh, if you do it well. That is, if you do it in a way that makes sense and has a clear terms of failure, you know, and a significant failure at that. Yeah, just some ideas on how to use time as a motivator. So that's it, and have a very nice day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.